So often when we talk about murder and homicide investigations, many of them don't get solved. But in this case, detectives were able to find evidence that put these suspects at the scene of this crime. Taking a look at the bigger picture here, half of murder cases in the U.S. go unsolved. The national homicide clearance rate is at an all-time low at just 50%. Our Alan Janae has been covering this case for the last week. He spent the day going through the fine details of this case. And Alan, law enforcement agencies are now using investigative tools that are consistently evolving.
Well, that's true, Michael. That's because these phones that we all carry now have data and have information that simply didn't exist years ago. Oftentimes, the phones that we have are sharing information about our location. You may have signed off on that with the small print you've agreed to that most people don't pay attention to. But as investigators here build their case against these three suspects, we wanted to know what led them to their doors. In the open spaces near the border of Jefferson and Boulder counties, the cell sites stand out, the ones that may have helped break the case when investigators sought warrants from cell phone companies.
So this really came as a result of cell phone device forensics and then supporting information from our public.
They're called geofencing warrants, or reverse warrants, says veteran prosecutor and defense attorney Karen Steinhauser. You're not starting with the name of the suspects. You don't have those names yet.
No. And that's why it's a reverse. They're doing it to get the names to then be able to get specific warrants.
With 7 reported rock-throwing incidents that night, the idea is that any phones at more than one spot may be phones belonging to potential suspects. But investigators have to walk a fine line. Is this matter of law settled?
Absolutely not.
There have been court challenges to unnecessarily broad sweeps, raising questions about unreasonable searches and privacy.
These type of broad geofencing warrants that are asking for large areas without being able to really particularize where, specifically they're looking, those are the ones that are getting struck down.
But in the rock-throwing case, investigators had not only specific locations, but specific times in remote areas. And that, says Steinhauser, means the courts are more likely to allow it as evidence if the case goes to trial. Sounds like this one might have a good chance because it's very specific as to where.
Absolutely.
And when.
Absolutely.
Now, the geofencing warrants don't allow investigators to look into your phone at things like texts or pictures. They have to get additional warrants for that, but often they do. Interestingly enough, in this case, the perpetrators of this crime picked remote areas to heave rocks at other cars. Well, that meant that investigators may have had a better chance to zero in on those areas and the few phones that were in them to find the people they're calling suspects. In Jefferson County, I'm Alan Janae, covering Colorado First.